Our world is full of many possibilities, and many of those possibilities have been kept secret from us. The instinct of human curiosity has known no limit since the dawn of time. We have insatiably sought answers for questions we have had for oh so long, and so far we've only scratched the surface. Paranatural occurrences, life outside of our own planet, alternate dimensions and realities, and so many more of these theories have enticed the human mind to seek out what may very well be impossible. It's probably for the best that we never find such answers. Just simply having them could be enough to drive us mad, wishing we had never found them in the first place. But you never know. What you've been looking for may have been right in front of your face the whole time. And that, my friends, is exactly what the entire story of Control revolves around. The tale of Jessie Faden is a rather interesting one. Her whole world changed one day when she and her younger brother Dylan had a close encounter of the sixth kind. A meeting with the supernatural. A slide projector that opened doorways to other dimensions and encountered one of these dimensions and one of its inhabitants. Right in their hometown of Ordinary. Oh, the irony. After the incident, Jessie lost Dylan to the FBC, Federal Bureau of Control, an organization known for discovering the supernatural and keeping it under wraps. When she finally catches up to them, she discovers the truth that reality is nothing but a fever dream, as she finds herself amongst the paranormal and right at home with them. But the very nature of our world must not be left unbalanced by these outsiders. Which brings into play Jessie's role as the FBC's new director to maintain this balance. However, the invasion of a supernatural force known as the Hiss has upset this balance, corrupting the Bureau and unleashing many threats inside the oldest house, causing chaos and disarray. And that, my friends, is the purpose of today's video, to rank these threats that she encounters from worst to best, mainly in the form of bosses, as per usual. This list is solely based on my personal experience, and I will be doing my best to give out my own personal tips to see you guys actually be able to beat these bosses, because believe me, some of them are actually pretty tough, and there are people to this day who haven't really beaten them. So without further ado, let us begin this journey up through Control's bosses up to their best quality. Number 8. Possessed Tamasi. You know, sometimes there are two kinds of bosses in video games. One type is specifically unique, and the other introduces new enemy archetypes. And Tamasi here happens to be one of those new archetype bosses. Before the Hiss got loose and stole his soul and body, Tamasi was the head of communications for the FBC. I haven't really read or found much lore on him, so that's as much as I can tell you right now. Sorry. So now let's get into the reason why he's starting off the list as the worst boss in Control. Aside from being an annoying floating prick who dodges most of your attacks, you're basically bringing a knife to a gunfight here. When you initially encounter him, you're just starting off. You don't have any really good resources to use against him, like other weapon forms or mods or more energy for your powers, or even any other power that you have aside from the basic launch. And for a starting boss, he hits like a freight train carrying 50,000 tons of tungsten. So you basically have to be on the move constantly to avoid damage. And be sure to keep your eye on him as well, because you never know when and where he's going to attack from. But sadly, you can't really be consistent with that, because he'll throw in some other Hiss minions to keep you distracted. Once you're finally able to down him the first time, you won't have to worry about him unless you go on a side quest that features him. The first encounter with Tamasi is actually one of 2 mandatory boss fights in all of Control. The second time you encounter him is optional, along with the many others in this game. You should be more prepared this time around, depending if and when you decide to fight him. And besides, who wouldn't want to take care of unfinished business? Not much has really changed from the initial encounter, except the kinds of enemies he spawns in this time around. And of course his new telekinetic shield. He still hits pretty hard, so be sure to make good use of the arena around you, as well as whatever new weapon forms and abilities you've gained up to this point. The mechanics and challenge he presents are way too much, especially for an inexperienced beginner player. Sorry, got twisted up with my words. But yeah guys, that's the exact reason why he's on the bottom of my list. Number 7.
Shit. Now
Not
what?
good.
The thing that was Hartman. Ever since we were young, we've all had a reason to fear the dark. And that fear was revived when one of Remedy's earlier titles, Alan Wake, came into existence. And what better way to revive the dread it instilled by connecting the universes and bringing it here into control. Dr. Hartman is a character from Alan Wake's universe. He was twisted and distorted into the abomination you see here by the hiss and the darkness from his universe. Ever since then, he's been lurking in the dark, terrorizing the Bureau and its investigation sector. But fortunately, his mutation gave him the weakness everything else in Alan Wake's universe has: light. And of course, light here plays a major role in this DLC, given the fact that it brings back Alan Wake and connects the universes. So obviously it's going to play a major role in defeating him. The main course of this DLC has you solving puzzles involving light to drive him into one final encounter between you two. You have to travel across the many different areas in the investigation sector to turn on all the lights to finish him off, each one with its own individual puzzle encounters with him. You have to stay in whatever source of light there is to remain safe from harm, all while trying to figure out how to brighten things up in the area. When he retreats to the final area, which happens to be the Bright Falls AWE zone, that's where the full-on fight happens. It starts out somewhat the same as the previous encounters, where you have to solve a light puzzle to get the lights on. And when you do, that's when his health appears and you can take him down. Make sure you unload on him because he will try to turn the lights off and regenerate health. He did this to me several times and I thought it was a repetitive mechanic, but you can break him out of it as long as you stagger him. And he'll also bring in hiss minions to make things even more tedious. He has a good variety of attacks that do a lot of damage as well, such as Tamasi's telekinetic throw, a hiss AoE explosion, and this move where he can grab you and suck the life straight out of you, regenerating his first health bar. That, topped on his dark mechanic and his minions, make this fight a lot more demanding than it should be. Number 6. The anchor is one of many altered items in the game. Regular everyday objects of use that are the source of supernatural occurrences and are a main focus of research for the Bureau. And the anchor is only one of very few that actually put up a fight against you. When you first encounter this floating piece of iron, it suddenly transforms into a giant acid trip that spews clocks everywhere. I don't know who put that theme with it, but okay. So here's how to take it on. It spews out clocks in a pattern that just so happens to be clockwise. When it reveals its core to shoot at you, you just take a clock and throw it in there. It's pretty simple really, as long as you stay out of its way and time your shots perfectly. But things do get a little bit more tedious when the hiss minions start coming in. Having to manage these guys and making sure you don't get blasted in the face when you're not looking can be quite a chore, as well as making sure you don't run out of levitation power and fall to your death. Not much in terms of mechanical design, but it is a lot more well balanced than the previous two on this list, and that's why I decided to play it just slightly higher than them. Number 5. Possessed Salvador. So, you're on a mission to find your younger brother who's been trapped here for years, right? And in order to do that, you gotta bring another supernatural item back under control. And of course, you're going to experience something really cool and really trippy at the same time while doing so. In this case, the TV transforms the area around it into the area inside its screen. You follow it deep inside its twisted world thinking that's what you have to confront. But when you reach the inner sanctum of the room, you learn that the TV is only a goal point. The real obstacle here happens to be the head of security that you finally meet, who is also possessed by the hiss. Salvador is the second of the two mandatory bosses in control. And of course he's also an archetype boss at that. Apparently all the other optional bosses just so happen to be the unique ones. I find him better than Tamasi for a couple reasons. One is that he's more grounded and doesn't float around in the air dodging at almost every single one of your attacks. Though however he does put up like a telekinetic shield with debris, making him quite tanky. And there's a lot more cover in his area than Tamasi's. He does of course share a common trait with his predecessor by having a telekinetic throw, but it's a lot more manageable. He does also bring in a lot of hiss minions, but given the amount of powers you may have obtained up to this point, such as the C's to control other enemies and make them fight each other, you can pretty much use that to your advantage here, making the chore of taking them down a lot quicker and easier, and a bit more balanced and entertaining. Number 4.
Is that the
Mold
source?
1.
It's kind of pretty. Nope. Not pretty.
You know, of all the bosses that remind me of a Dead Space creature, this one really takes the cake. This creature is basically ground zero or the epicenter of an interdimensional mold that's been growing in the Bureau. Aside from spreading deep within its bowels, it's also had some Venus flytrap. It also has some Venus flytrap traits. It gives off a sweet cotton candy-like scent that lures in its victims, thinking it's a good treat to eat, and when they do it, they turn into mindless mold zombies. But by taking an antidote that allows a host to resist its effects, Jesse is able to go down to the source and perform some proper fungicide on the sentient mycelium. It has a lot of creativity in its design, but proves to be too much of a challenge at times. Poison gas, dropping bomb pods, homing projectiles, and unpredictable slaps. The usual kind of stuff you'd expect from a boss like this. Its weak points are the blue glowing puzzles. One is quite plain to see in the main head, the other two not so much. The best way people find to fight this thing is by taking cover behind the platforms around the area. But when the next phases with the poison gas and spore pods come in, that's when that strategy is moot. Apparently there's a glitch that the devs haven't bothered to fix yet. If you stand in a certain area behind the rock, it won't attack you at all and you can just lay waste to it. But I don't find that very sportsmanlike. I prefer to fight challenging foes like this head on, with or without the difficulty. And if you ask me, the devs really need to fix that glitch, and that's why Mold 1 earns his place as number 4. Number 3. The Former. So, do y'all remember that bit from Ghostbusters where there was a demon dog living in Dana's fridge? Well, it's pretty much the same concept here, only replace the demon dog with an eldritch being. And I don't think this fridge was ever really normal to begin with, either. Think of it as another version of SCP-173. If you look away, you die. So there's this guy in there who's been watching the darn thing for like a whole day and Jessie has to go in there and help him. When she tries to return the fridge to normal, she gets sucked into a whole nother dimension that's very similar to the astral plane she's been visiting with the board. Instead of it being nice and bright, it's completely dark. And instead of there being an inverse black pyramid floating in the sky, there's this wacky waving inflatable arm guy with a trilobite for a head. And one eye, of course. And yes, that eye is its main weak point. I gotta say, it's really quite a spectacle to fight Former like this. You taking on a titanic foe using your powers and gun against it, with its giant scythe-like arms crashing down on you, and with it shooting giant energy balls at you as well. Former's really not a difficult fight at all. Just attack when you can and take cover when needed. But there is one thing in this fight that you have to look out for in particular, and that's the little holes you can poke in the platform that you can fall to your death through. Also, it's worth noting that, like Tamasi, you fight Former more than one time. After you beat him in the initial encounter, talk to Langston straight after and he'll give you a side quest called Langston's Runaways. In this quest, you have to corral a bunch of altered items that have gotten loose. One of which is a flamingo that turns the area around it into a pink obstacle course. When you cleanse the flamingo, you will initiate the second and only other encounter with Former in the main game. There is one more in the Foundation DLC, but that's only if you attack him when you meet to talk with him. The fight's pretty much the same except for the platform layout, which can make the fight a little bit trickier than the previous encounter. When you encounter him for the third and probably final time in this game, in the Foundation DLC, he's actually rather friendly and he's not really mean to you at all. Apparently this encounter unlocks a little bit of lore with him. It's been theorized that he was once a member of the board, but was kicked out by being blamed unfairly for something. Number 2. Possessed Marshall. You know, out of all the possessed staff of the FBC, Marshall's probably the most tragic, but that's only because we got to spend more time with her than we did the others. You know, there was actually another boss in this game like her. Possessed Horowitz. He was a random security officer whom you had to help out by finding his partner, and when you got back with him, it was too late. But there really wasn't anything special about him, so I decided not to include him. He was just a random hiss ranger with a health bar to make him even more beefier than the others. Marshall here is about the same archetype as him. The only difference is they got a lot more creative with her. She can move at very agile speeds, teleport, use more than one weapon, and get creative with her attack patterns. And of course there are going to be hiss minions here as well. She is the only boss in the Foundation DLC. And her story is that she found out something was going on with the board. So to protect our dimension from theirs, she tried to destroy a huge obsidian monolith called the Neil, which acts as a connection between our dimension and theirs. But that only caused our worlds to collide, and her equipment was damaged in the accident, so she got possessed by the hiss. There are actually quite a few fun and interesting ways to fight her here. Some of them rely on the environment by using the new shape ability you get in this DLC. I was actually going to make her my number 1 choice because of how much fun I had fighting her. But the very thing that keeps her from the top spot is this glitch that makes you have to restart because she'll disappear and you can't finish the fight. Also, you should know that Former is actually willing to help you out if you don't attack him and just talk to him in this DLC. He'll help you out by sending in astral dummies to fight alongside you. Well guys, we've made it through 7 out of the 8 bosses in Control so far, leaving the only one left who happens to be the best out of all of them. And if you've spent time with this game like I have, you can probably guess who it is. Number 1. Isej. Mirror, mirror on the wall, what sort of secrets can you offer to all? Well, how about another alternate dimension as per usual within my glass? But with this one I suggest you get out fast, for a very dark presence lurks within here, attacking all that draw near. Okay, that's enough, I'm sorry. The mirror altered item is one of the more extensive research topics for the Bureau.
Hey there, Jesse Maiden.
A whole other world that is a reflection of our own within its surface.
I'm much wilder.
Just about everything in this world is reverse. Light is dark, forward is backwards, and of course our evil versions of ourselves living here. But fortunately here we don't have to worry about a whole lot. Except Jesse's mirrored evil doppelganger Isej, who's lurking in the dark corners of every reflective surface in this world. She's not a complete copy of Jesse, however, given the fact that she wears an outfit that makes her look like Dark Phoenix a little bit. You'll find her by doing a side quest in the synchronization lab. After doing a puzzle to unlock the mirror and trying to cleanse it, you'll stumble upon a whole alternate universe within this mirror. After doing some exploration, you'll find that you have an evil doppelganger stalking you throughout the world. After investigating 3 glass panels where she's hiding, she'll pop out and that's when the whole fight begins. She can match you step for step by using almost every single one of the abilities that you can. And she uses even more of her arsenal as the fight progresses. The key to defeating her is to hang back and remain tactical with how you fight her. You can't just run in and shoot wildly, this isn't Doom, you know. Every time she pops out from cover and stops attacking, that right there is your opening. This fight is number 1 for me and probably a lot of other people because of how chaotically fun it can be. You go in, fight a foe who's on equal footing with you, with guns and superpowers, and every single little move you make just causes absolute carnage in the area around you. And most importantly, no glitches for all I know. Aside from that, I think the rest is obvious why she's number 1 here on my list, and quite a few others' lists too. Well guys, this about wraps up my list. Do y'all agree? Which of these supernatural bosses do you think is the best? Try and let me know if you all want to see more lists like this. I really do enjoy doing them, and I am without a doubt looking forward to whatever my next project like this will be. You know, at first I wasn't entirely sure about doing a list like this for these guys, but after deciding to try out this game and experiencing them firsthand, how could I not? I hope you all enjoyed, and I shall see you in the next video, whatever it may be. Peace.
It's the ordinary story